because he's nothing more than a pawn, although he thinks he's a rook or a knight. You know, I don't like talking about Bill Maher, but I think it is imperative that we do, because there is a lot of context that I think is getting missed here as to why Bill has become so much of a annoying son of a bitch, be the best way to describe him. Now, he personally, for me, is someone that I used to watch for years, including back when he was doing Politically Incorrect, and then ultimately when he started doing Real Time with Bill Maher. There was a time where Bill was good, and then he wasn't. And I would say of all the moments where I look back on Bill Maher and saw the full transformation into a complete shitlib was when he initially supported Bernie's run for president in the summer of 2015, had him on the show, they had a sit-down interview, wanted to talk about the necessity of language when it comes to appealing to the masses, particularly about the stigma of socialism. And at the time I thought, wow, Bill really cares. Bill's really trying to make a difference. It turns out that shortly thereafter, Bill got his talking to and he got his mind right. Well, he could not help himself with his show last night. This is a statement that he decided to put out regarding Israel-Palestine. Now, there is another layer to this that not many people are talking about, and we're going to get to it. But first, brace yourself. Bill Maher is about to speak.
The Jews' homeland. And Jews have always lived there. You can look it up. It's in this book called the Bible. It says the Jews built a temple with a really big wall 7 centuries before Muhammad or Islam ever existed. And sure as shit, you can still go there and touch it. Calling Jews colonizers in Israel is like calling Native Americans colonizers here. It's ridiculous.
Now, I don't know what you think is so ridiculous about it, because there is proof beyond a reasonable doubt, and it has been displayed even in places like Grok, which I will point out to you all right now if you're not familiar with this. You know, I'm not saying that Grok has all the answers. I would never pretend that an organization like that knows everything about anything. But here's what they do know. Modern Palestinians share 70 to 80% of the Y chromosomes that match with ancient Canaanites, Israelites, and this is from the Times of Israel, 2024. Ashkenazi Jews have about 30 to 50% Levantine ancestry, with over 80% maternal lines in Europe. Vast differences show Palestinians closer to Bronze Age Levantines, e.g. the Megiddo samples, than Ashkenazis, who cluster near Europeans. Thus, Palestinians are genetically closer to ancient Judeans than the modern Israelis. But hey, what does Grok know? Bill Maher's talking. He knows a lot of things about things.
To mark the October 7th anniversary, we must launch a campaign to educate young Americans about the Middle East. And the way I'd like to begin that process is by addressing an open letter to Chapel Roan, a great new recording artist who, like a Hezbollah pager, is really blowing up.
To even make a joke about that is the type of thing that only a privileged shitlib could possibly come up with, because, again, one of the reasons that I am so hypercritical of this political class of people is that they are the most obvious creatures of comfort. They desire to feel comfortable at all costs, which is why the liberal was always the great warning from someone like Ben Franklin, who always said, anyone who is willing to give up liberty for security deserves neither. And if there's one thing we've learned, especially since 9/11, is that liberals, because of their status, will always assume that those beneath them will suffer before they do, and they are all too ready, willing, and able to allow them to suffer as a result, which is why Bill Maher says the heresy that he speaks of. Not just because he doesn't know jack shit about Israel or its history, but also because he is so ready, willing, and able to throw innocent Palestinians under the bus now for political and economic purposes. And I'm going to get to that in a minute, but we'll continue.
Chappell, if you think it was repressive growing up queer in the Midwest, try the Mideast. Chappell, did you know that for 2,000 years, Palestine was like an Uber driver with a 3-star rating? Nobody wanted it.
Again, that's not true. It has been whitewashed, Western style, out of history. Anyone who knows anything about Palestine, especially prior to 1948, would know that it was also a safe haven for many Jews during the Holocaust. In addition, it was a very flourishing part of the Middle East. It bloomed despite what the Zion-Nazis would have you believe. It has bloomed for centuries. You only need look online, look up Palestine 1946, 1944, 1910, and you will see just how prosperous this supposed land for people without a land actually was way back when. Now, Bill Maher in particular is such a ogre of a human because, like many shitlibs, especially of the boomer generation, they fancy themselves as smarter than everybody else. And even if they're wrong, they have an excuse as to why they're wrong. And it will never be because you're right. So when he speaks, he's speaking from a very confident position without any leg to stand on. Almost like somebody we know of, don't we?
And there was never any Arab country called Palestine. Chappell, you're not wrong that oppression is bad, or that Palestinian and many other Muslim populations are oppressed and deserve to be freed. You just have it completely ass backwards as to who is doing the oppressing. Hamas is a terrorist mafia that took over Gaza. These are the oppressors.
No, actually, one person's oppressor is another person's freedom fighter, in case you haven't noticed. But the thing that Bill Maher still refuses to acknowledge is that Israel has done anything wrong. I saw somebody who was, his name is Blanchard Lynch or something. He was speaking on Dad Saves America podcast earlier and seemed to have a few decent points until eventually he got to the point where he said that it was Hamas that attacked Israel, and that's how everything started on October 7th. And Bill Maher still buys into that bullshit. I don't even know if he buys into it or not. I just think Bill Maher is a colonizing supremacist who believes in Western hegemony, and he knows that it's good for business if he continues to espouse this message, even with 750,000 people mass murdered. So he'll keep going. There is nothing in his way that's going to stop him. There is something that could stop him, but I highly doubt that that's going to happen. And we're going to discuss that in a minute as we finish this out.
When you make it all about Israel, you take the pressure off of them. You enable them. Gender may not be binary, but right and wrong kind of is.
Well, you are very wrong, Billy Boy. And part of the reason I think that Bill Maher has gone down this road, I had an epiphany that I shared with Jen earlier, and I 1000% believe it now. Bill has been on this trajectory for quite some time. And I often suspected, as has been the case in many elements of the failures of capitalism, that eventually we would hit a point where the powers that be would consolidate so much wealth and power that there would be no way that you could question them if you are under their umbrella. It's no different than what's happened with other people who we don't have to name, but you know who I'm referring to, that ultimately took the corporate money from very, we'll say, dangerous entities. When they decided they didn't want to take it anymore, well, we saw what happened. And the same is probably true for somebody like Bill. And the reason I bring this up, and the reason why anybody should care, if those are not aware of what is currently happening at HBO, it's very similar to what just happened at TikTok. It's what's happened now at CBS News. And it is ultimately what is going to, again, until it's official, it's not official, but let's just assume that it will be. HBO, Warner Brothers, and CNN will be taken over by the Ellisons. Yes, they say it's David Ellison, but he's Nepo Boy, and his daddy, David, Larry Ellison, who is the biggest funder of the IDF in the world, is buying HBO. And so by doing that, Bill Maher, as one can imagine, because his career comes first above everything else, is going to want to be in the good graces of these now modern day Murdochs, if you will. And so this is where we are. This is what has come to pass. New CBS owner David Ellison met with top Israeli general in scheme to spy on Americans. Now, when you take over all of these major media companies, at least however major it is for the time being, you are going to continue to get people in line. And if you do not find satisfaction in what they're doing, well, we all know what's going to happen next. They're going to be on the chopping block. The most obvious example, the most obvious juxtaposition, I would say, in terms of personalities that have shows on HBO, there's two that come to mind. There's Bill Maher and there's John Oliver. And as we've seen with John Oliver's content, he will at least be given a talking to. Bill Maher is not going to have to do anything, much like any of our elected officials on both sides of the aisle. Some are cheap whores, some are expensive whores. But at the end of the day, the Israel lobby knows who's there to play ball and who isn't. And so in the case of Bill Maher, he is making it very clear that he is there to play ball, which is why he's going to continue to say what he is saying, because $20 million a year in Palestinian blood money is definitely worth it for Bill Maher, which is why he's going to say that, and he is letting them know that he is ready. He is ready by just saying what needs to be said. But this does present a little bit of an interesting conundrum here, because now it's being brought to everybody's attention that David Ellison is part of the Mossad, clandestine operations, spying on Americans. And we all know this guy is not loyal to America. Bill Maher is loyal to David Ellison, and he will be even more so once they take over the network. But I would say that this bit of information is pretty disturbing. In one of the scariest moments in modern history, we're doing our best at SharePost to pierce the fog of lies that conceal, but we need some help. And of course, we are here to plug them. And so, giving a shout out, of course, to a gentleman who we would love to have on the show at some point. Max, you know we want you here, baby. So from Wyatt Reed and Max Blumenthal at the Gray Zone, the new owner of Paramount, David Ellison, participated in an Israeli government-led plot to surveil and suppress pro-Palestine activists in the U.S., leaked emails show. Originally dubbed 12 Tribes, a reference to the dozen Jewish billionaires solicited to underwrite the operation. The scheme sought out American faces to fund surveillance firms run by Israeli intelligence veterans on behalf of Tel Aviv, as it targeted American citizens participating in the BDS movement. The emails documenting the foreign influence campaign to counter BDS were first identified by journalist Jack Polson, who discovered them in a trove leaked by the Handala Hacking Collective in 2024. The files show former IDF minister Benny Gantz was tasked with recruiting wealthy Westerners to fund surveillance firms operated by Israeli intelligence veterans as they stalked and harassed people whom the government of Israel suspected of harboring pro-Palestine sympathies. If this is not a throwback to McCarthyism, I don't know what the fuck is. In the emails, Hollywood talent agency executive Adam Berkowitz identified Ellison as very interested in helping out with undermining the BDS movement. Berkowitz introduced Ellison to the Israeli general. Talk about a fucking turncoat for the American people. Remember that name, Adam Berkowitz. Benny, meet David. David, meet Benny. Berkowitz wrote on December 23rd, 2015. So they've been doing this for a long time, explaining that he told David briefly about Gantz's 12-tribe idea, where you can expound onto him, in which he seemed very interested in. So you see, guys, these changes, these multi-level changes to our country, they don't just happen overnight. They happen over several years. So everything makes sense in terms of a timeline. Hey, Bill, the Ellisons are getting HBO at some point. Keep that in mind if you're thinking about, changing your tune about any of these topics. Well, he got his mind right, that's for sure. And so the document also listed other hyper-wealthy Zionist activists as potential 12 tribe members, but we will first acknowledge those that are on it. Oracle founder and friends of the IDF board, Larry Ellison, Israeli-American billionaire and top Democratic Party sugar daddy, Chaim Sabin, and Google founder Sergey Brin, whose Israel support was still to be determined. And of those named, book chain owner Heather Reisman has agreed to donate. And so other individuals who seem to be a part of this cabal that's growing and probably still is, Eli Broad, 5.7 billion, real estate giant, philanthropist, full-on rapist, supporting pro-Israel causes. Selmo Nissenbaum, art collector. You want to talk about one of the best ways to hide money and to cheat the government and to get away with serious crimes. Art collection is one of the most, if not the most lucrative way to do it. Partner of personnel, Investimos, since 2008, director of UHF Incorporated, and supports Weizmann Institute. Dorothea Steinbrook, 5.8 billion, steel tycoon heir. Safra family, Kevin Burmeister, tech innovator, real estate investor, full-on rapist, founding investor of Skype. Frank Lowy, co-founder of Westfield Group, operator of over 100 shopping centers in Aussie land, New Zealand, the US, and the UK, net worth 4.6 billion. Anthony Pratt, a net worth of 7.1 billion, packaging. Edward Kukerman, French-Israeli businessman. The Rothschild family, I don't have to comment on that one. Lord Stanley Fink, net worth 180 million. Oh, that's it. Lord, how do you have a name like Lord and only 180 million to your name? You got to catch up. Sir Ronald Cohen, British businessman and political figure, known as the father of British venture capitalism. I'm not even going to touch that one. You guys can make your own judgments. Lord George Weidenfeld, British publisher, philanthropist, newspaper columnist, and pro-Israel supporter. And finally, Paju Zablukowicz, Finnish-born, London-based business magnate, investor, art collector, and pro-Israel philanthropist. One of the main supporters of UK pro-Israel group BICOM. I'd imagine that guy's given Tommy Robinson quite a few bucks, or quite a few shingles, I should say. Those afforded the dubious honor of being selected donated $1 million to the official Israeli propaganda slush fund, would be anointed one of the 12 tribes of Israel, all of whom would be guided directly by the Israeli government, according to a promotional document. An image from internal promotional documents, the 12 tribes of Israel, who would be represented by a dozen Western billionaires. The slide was machine translated by Google. Funding for this initiative shall be provided by an exclusive group of the 12 most influential Jewish philanthropists, symbolizing the 12 Jewish tribes. Israel's government shall act as a 13th facilitating tribe. What you have here is a systematic takeover of our country that's been going on for a while. It didn't just happen yesterday. Now, part of the reason why I think it's accelerated to such an extent is in terms of where we are right now, I believe, has a lot to do with Milikowski's position, and he decided he wasn't going to be protecting these clandestine operations the way he once did. Who the hell knew about this stuff? I didn't know about it. So we'll finish it out here, but here are the final statements that I think are of considerable importance. The same was true with the restitution of Jewish property. There needs to be something less governmental. This is a phenomenon that grows from below, and it is not right to approach it from above. This will not be a covert project, but the connection to the state and the government needs to be very controlled. There are lost arenas that will never be conducted in a business-like manner. We need to see whether to act against the slanderers or against the slanders. The type of body and its connection to the government are actually one issue. With the funding from the 12 tribes, Israel would deploy state-of-the-art cyber tech as a soft weapon through firms like Black Cube, the notorious Israeli intelligence cutout, best known for stalking the accusers of disgraced Hollywood mogul Harvey Weinstein. And as you can see here, I know it's very hard to see, but it's a who's who of Israelis running Black Cube. And what this shows us all, ladies and gentlemen, as it comes full circle, the email exchanges also offer a glimpse into the early stage of David Ellison's emerging role as one of Silicon Valley's top Israel enforcers. It's a role he was seemingly born to play, given the zeal displayed by his billionaire father, Larry Ellison, in defending the apartheid state. So there you have it. And that's how we got here. And that's why the likes of, we'll say, Bill Maher is one example. There are plenty others, to be fair. But this is an example of how the systemic takeover of our institutions have come about as a result of us not properly dealing with the state of Israel. And now, because it has spilled over into such dramatic effect, we are now faced with having to unwind this unholy alliance. But as many people would think, oh, David Ellison just popped up out of nowhere. No, he didn't. He was on the scene over a decade ago. But we didn't know that that was what was going on. It is only as a result of what has been going on as of late that is showing us exactly why we need to disassemble this relationship forever. And if that means we have to highlight people, take with that what you will. But yes, and we have to put our differences aside. That is the only way we are ever going to deal with this. I am upset, but I am not at all surprised. That's the difference.